On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3.
He was a multimillionaire, businessman, friend to the stars, predator, and trafficker. Jeffrey Epstein moved effortlessly among presidents, princes, Nobel laureates, and tech billionaires. He dined with arms dealers and media moguls with rumored intelligence ties. But was it charm and wealth that opened those doors, or something darker behind the facade? Today on the Infographics Show, we're going beyond the headlines to uncover the real Jeffrey Epstein. On Saturday, July 6, 2019, in a joint FBI-NYPD sting, agents took a sledgehammer to the door of Epstein's $77 million Manhattan townhouse, and to the illusion he had built around himself. Inside the opulent, high-tech mansion, then the most expensive single private home in New York, they found thousands of lurid images, a cache of photos tracking Epstein's decades of abuse. Sexualized objects were everywhere: explicit paintings, provocative statues, a massage table, sex toys, and bottles of lubricant. On the shelves, a first edition of Lolita. In his office, the Marquis de Sade's The Misfortunes of Virtue. These weren't just eccentric collector's items, they were clues. But more revealing was the mountain of CDs and hard drives, clear evidence of Epstein's perversions and possibly leverage for blackmail. There were framed photographs showing him with tech titans Elon Musk and Bill Gates. In one frame, a dollar bill signed by Gates himself with a cryptic message scrawled across it, "I was wrong." Other photos put Epstein alongside Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, former U.S. President Bill Clinton, President Donald Trump, British billionaire Richard Branson, Pope John Paul II, Mick Jagger, Fidel Castro, even the public intellectual Noam Chomsky. A who's who of global influence posing with a man concealing one of the darkest secrets of the modern era. Security cameras dotted room after room, and those were just the ones you could see. A victim later said the house was wired top to bottom with hidden cameras feeding a central security room. It was hard not to wonder if Epstein recorded powerful people in compromising situations. One New York Times reporter later wrote that Epstein had boasted, off the record, about being a collector of dirt on the world's high and mighty. And as if it couldn't get any stranger, the house displayed a large painting of Bill Clinton in a blue dress and red high heels, a nod to the Monica Lewinsky scandal. It was later falsely rumored that Epstein also owned a painting of George W. Bush by the same artist, showing him in the Oval Office with a paper airplane beside toppled Jenga blocks, a reference to 9/11. Whatever the truth, one thing was undeniable: Epstein had a dark and unsettling sense of humor. And he was very, very rich. The Manhattan townhouse was just one of many properties. He owned a 70-acre private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Little St. James, better known as Epstein Island. There, according to workers and victims, the rich and powerful mingled freely with beautiful women. In 2023, an American financier paid $60 million for it. He also had a Paris apartment near the Arc de Triomphe and a Palm Beach estate. He was also the owner of Great St. James in the Virgin Islands, where he had started work on a compound he was expanding at the time of his 2019 arrest. In New Mexico, he held a 7,500-acre ranch that he named Zorro. His modes of transport weren't just luxury, they were central to his life and his crimes. He owned 2 Gulfstream jets, and for longer trips a Boeing 727-200, the so-called Lolita Express. Together, the aircraft were worth an estimated $25 to $30 million. He also kept 2 helicopters and a small fleet of luxury vehicles: 7 Chevrolet Suburbans, a cargo van, a Range Rover, a Mercedes-Benz sedan, a Cadillac Escalade, and a Hummer II, to name a few. Across his properties, high-end furniture and expensive art were everywhere. One home was even designed by a French interior decorator known for working with royalty. It all pointed to serious money. And that was just what he let people see. His exact net worth was unknown, but it certainly ran into the hundreds of millions, maybe even over $1 billion, as his lawyers would later claim. In 2025, Senator Ron Wyden released a partial summary indicating banks that had flagged more than $1.5 billion in suspicious Epstein-linked transactions. It detailed thousands of wire transfers running from the early 2000s through 2019. The money moved through a network of offshore entities, Russian banks, women from Eastern Europe, Israeli tech companies. It was a long trail. And this was a man who started as a math teacher, who somehow landed a job at a prestigious school without a degree. In 2008, following his first arrest for sex crimes, he received what's been called a sweetheart deal. It wasn't just the deal of a lifetime, but one that seemed to defy belief and undermine the U.S. justice system. Despite investigations showing that he had trafficked dozens of victims to his Palm Beach mansion, he only got an 18-month sentence, and not the kind that any other inmate will ever experience. Instead of state prison, he was sent to the Palm Beach County Stockade. At his lawyer's request, he was first placed in a separate dorm, and then he moved to the Stockade's infirmary. The infirmary had never been staffed before, but for Epstein, men and women were hired to fill it. A captain even ordered his cell door left unlocked and arranged what the media called liberal access to a private attorney's room with a TV. Many of his victims were poor, recruited from local high schools with the promise of easy money. Within months, he was out on work release for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, even though offenders like him are not supposed to get that privilege. Deputies assigned to him were told to wear suits and repeatedly referred to him as the client rather than inmate. He paid the sheriff's office about $128,000 for this bespoke security while he worked at a non-profit office that he had created, an office deputies helped him find. Epstein always claimed to be a man of the arts and study. He also claimed to be doing humanitarian work as a global philanthropist. But in truth, his foundations were a smokescreen, a front to obfuscate the reality of his life. As the New York Times would say, his fake charity was an image boost built on deception. If he did donate, it was for selfish reasons, and he often exaggerated how much he gave. On those work release days, deputies sat at the reception desk while he met visitors behind closed doors. Logs of these visitors were later destroyed. Deputies were instructed to greet him on arrival, and at least 9 times he was allowed to go to his Palm Beach house. This wasn't just bending the rules, it was throwing them out the window. He used his own driver, stacked up dozens of outside appointments, and made at least 69 doctor visits in 6 months. He was being treated like a VIP, and that was just in Florida, just one of the properties where he took his victims. Yet, in a pattern that would repeat itself, when detectives searched the house, the computer equipment and hard drives were gone. A detective later said in a documentary that it was obvious Epstein or someone protecting him had been tipped off and removed the equipment. Epstein's longtime Palm Beach butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, had the infamous Little Black Book, almost 1,600 names, 5,000 phone numbers, and thousands of emails and home addresses. Celebrities, scientists, politicians, oligarchs, princes, and princesses. Rodriguez said he was intimately familiar with his boss's depraved routines. He claimed he saw a lot of nudity around the pool, regularly cleaned and put away sex toys after Epstein's massages, and saw disturbing content on Epstein's personal computer. But because he tried to sell the book to lawyers for $50,000 instead of giving it to law enforcement, Rodriguez was sentenced to prison. 13 months later, he died of cancer at the age of 60, and he wasn't the only one. In the years after Epstein's first arrest, more than 24 people closely connected to him or his crimes would also die. Some were young, among them at least 3 victims and a former cellmate, fueling the conspiracy theories that followed. The evidence and testimonies of the victims could and should have sent Epstein away for years. Alexander Acosta, then the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, negotiated a federal non-prosecution agreement with Epstein's legal team. The deal granted Epstein immunity from federal prosecution, and unusually, this extended immunity to any potential co-conspirators. The Justice Department's internal watchdog later wrote that the agreement was intended to end the ongoing federal investigation. In effect, the FBI's probe was shut down and the slate wiped. No federal charges were brought, and the agreement meant prosecutors didn't have to publicly name anyone involved. According to the Daily Beast, a former White House official later claimed that Acosta told Trump transition interviewers, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." Still, in the Justice Department's 2020 review, investigators asked Acosta directly if he had any knowledge of Epstein being an intelligence asset. He said no, and the review reported no evidence of the contrary. Even so, something seemed very rotten in the state of Florida. State Senator Lauren Brooke didn't like what she had seen, telling the media they are supposed to uphold the law regardless of who a person is, how much money they have in the bank, or who they had on their airplane. But this was America, where money doesn't just talk, it can drown out every other sound. His sudden death in a jail cell on a night when the cameras mysteriously failed and 2 guards reportedly fell asleep raised serious doubts. And when a second autopsy said it looked like he had been murdered, even casual observers began to wonder if something far darker was at play. To understand what wasn't right, we need to shine a spotlight on his life. Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York, the first of 3 children. His mother was a homemaker, his father a park attendant and gardener. They never had much money, But to friends and neighbors, they seemed like a happy, well-liked family. Jeffrey attended a working-class school where he skipped 2 grades and graduated at just 16. He was smart, often making money on the side by tutoring other kids. He was described as a slightly nerdy, chubby kid who excelled at math and playing piano. He certainly wasn't the kind of boy who anyone ever expected would one day get involved with serious crime. He studied at 2 universities, including NYU's Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences, but never graduated. Despite this, he still managed to land a job in 1974 teaching math and physics at the prestigious Dalton School on Manhattan's Upper East. The likely reason? He may have lied on his resume. An alternative theory is that he was groomed as an intelligence asset, but there is no evidence for that. He might also just have been smart and impressed the interviewer. Regardless, Dalton was where New York's elites sent their children. It was the kind of place where old money ruled, where you found the who's who of New York high society. Just before Epstein joined Dalton, the headmaster was Donald Barr, the father of William Barr, the future attorney general who oversaw the Justice Department when Epstein's 2007 sweetheart deal was reviewed. Officially, his contract ended the day before Epstein's began, but staff later suggested Barr may have been the one to hire him, as he was known for bringing in unconventional teachers. Still, there is no hard evidence connecting Barr to Epstein beyond coincidence. Long before Epstein's crimes came to light, he was already rubbing shoulders with powerful men whose children would grow up powerful too. As for his teaching, accounts were mixed. Some former students remembered Epstein as smart and charismatic. Others described him as smarmy, sleazy, and unqualified. Several recalled how he surrounded himself with girls outside of class, something they found inappropriate. There was a mild sense of creepiness, one said. So there he was, a poor kid whose talents had pole vaulted him into the rarefied world of New York's elites. He made a name for himself, and not only for academics. In 1975, the Dalton paper wrote that at a PTA event, Mr. Epstein proved himself to be the ivory showman on the piano. He made sure to impress those wealthy parents, including Alan Ace Greenberg, the chairman of the investment bank Bear Stearns. After 2 years, Epstein left Dalton. Some accounts say he resigned, others that he was let go because of poor performance. Epstein soon landed on Wall Street, at Bear Stearns under the guidance of Alan Greenberg. The firm prized PhDs, poor, smart, with a desire to be rich. Epstein advised clients on tax implications of their portfolios, saving them money. He was an expert at finding loopholes, and he would spend the rest of his life living inside one. Just 4 years later, the Wall Street Journal printed the name Jeffrey E. Epstein as one of the new limited partners at the firm. That was the same year that he was featured in Cosmopolitan magazine as the Bachelor of the Month, the first of several articles that would be published about him over the years, discussing his many talents. The Cosmopolitan story said this 27-year-old maverick was a financial strategist who talks only to people who make over $1 million a year. The short write-up called him a New York dynamo who was seeking a cute Texas girl. Money and sex were seemingly already the chief motivations of his life. In 1981, Epstein left Bear Stearns. It's not certain why, but according to one of his former associates, it was because he had been discovered executing illegal operations. Epstein would later deny this, and the evidence is lacking. For a while, he became a fixer, a financial bounty hunter, helping wealthy people get back money they had lost to fraud. It'd been reported that during this period, he would brag about being well-connected. He certainly wasn't the archetypal financial expert. Among his possessions were fake passports, allowing him to move around the world under a cloak of anonymity, a criminal act that requires powerful connections. One Austrian passport featuring his real photo but a false name even listed his residence as Saudi Arabia. One of his clients was the Saudi businessman Adnan Khashoggi, a billionaire and arms dealer. Nicknamed the Great Gatsby of the Middle East, he threw lavish parties for the rich and powerful. Known to royalty and wealthy American businessmen, Adnan Khashoggi played a central role in the Iran-Contra affair. The U.S. led covert arms trafficking to Iran, with profits funneled to arm the cocaine-funded Nicaraguan Contras. Through a clandestine network he called the Safari Club, what some critics dubbed as a second CIA, Khashoggi was deeply entangled with Western intelligence. He also maintained strong ties to Israeli intelligence. None of this proves Epstein worked for any intelligence service, but it does show that he moved in circles that often overlapped with people who did. Chief among them was the disgraced British media mogul Robert Maxwell. Over the years, records and reporting have him linked to MI6, the KGB, and Mossad, though definitive proof of his status as an asset has never surfaced. Even so, the UK Foreign Office suspected Maxwell was at least a double agent, and probably a triple. Stephen Hoffenberg, founder and CEO of Towers Financial Corporation, later claimed it was he who introduced Epstein to Maxwell. He also alleged that the British intelligence had hired Epstein, but Hoffenberg made those claims from prison after being convicted of running a $450 million Ponzi scheme. Epstein worked for Hoffenberg as a consultant and would later be called a co-conspirator and architect in his scheme. Nonetheless, Epstein was never charged, and there was no proof Hoffenberg was right about what he had said about Maxwell and British intelligence. As a consultant, Epstein was earning about $70,000 a month in today's money, at least on paper. Records show that at the time, Epstein had to borrow $700,000 to make a $1 million investment on top of the $300,000 he already had. It suggests he hadn't yet reached the level of mega wealth that he would later flaunt. Whether he profited from the Ponzi scheme is unclear, but it's hard to believe his claim that he wasn't even aware of it. By the 1990s, he seemed to come into money fast. His management firm, J. Epstein & Co., soon claimed to handle the assets of the global elite. The operation grew quickly. At one point, he had 20 accountants and a slew of assistants who people later said always seemed very young and very attractive. To onlookers, the office could look more like a harem than a place of trading. He boasted that he took only clients with over $1 billion. A mere $800 million would get you a snub, which was and still is completely unheard of in financial circles. As one friend put it, I sent him a $500 million client and he wouldn't take him. The account was too small. Who those clients were has never been revealed, and how Epstein truly made his fortune remains murky. As one veteran investment manager put it, the trading desks didn't seem to know him. It's unusual for animals that big not to leave any footprints in the snow. If Epstein really amassed vast wealth, his business left no public trace, not even in Bloomberg. All Epstein himself admitted was that people had entrusted him with very large sums of money. Beyond that, there's no evidence that he ever earned clients millions or billions through his legendary trading skills. Epstein did have one known billionaire client, Leslie Wexner, the L Brands and Victoria's Secret chief. With power of attorney over Wexner's fortune, Epstein may have enriched himself, but that alone doesn't explain how he amassed so much wealth, enough to sit on prestigious boards or to casually write a $9.1 million check to Harvard, funding what became the Epstein Program for Mathematical Biology and Evolutionary Dynamics. As for Wexner, entrusting his wealth to a man he barely knew, it just didn't make sense. One Wexner executive later said, "Almost everyone wondered who Epstein was. He literally came out of nowhere." A former employee said that he was that mysterious person that everyone was scared to death of, yet no one understood how he'd been handed the keys to the kingdom. The two men went from strangers to thick as thieves. The Manhattan townhouse, it ultimately passed from a Wexner-controlled entity to Epstein for a nominal sum after Wexner had paid around $13 million for it in 1989 and spent millions more on renovations. Epstein later moved the property to his Virgin Islands company, Maple Inc., for $0. Epstein also invested alongside Wexner in the ultra-high-end New Albany development in Ohio, where Wexner had an estate. One victim later said that she was sent there, and Epstein kept a mansion of his own nearby. By then, there were already complaints about Epstein posing as a Victoria's Secret talent scout and abusing the association, a role he never officially held. As early as 1997, a young woman reported that he had interviewed her under that pretense. This was the first time that anyone went to the police about Epstein's sexual misconduct. Police investigated and called it a he said, she said scenario. They later said the victim withdrew the complaint, something she has always denied. In time, Wexner accused Epstein of misappropriating vast sums of money. Wexner and his wife were in turn sued by shareholders who claimed that they had allowed Epstein's influence to grow unchecked. Even months after Epstein's 2008 conviction, their financial ties had not been fully unraveled. It would take another 18 months before Epstein was finally cut out of Wexner's business life. It was clear Epstein did what he wanted. That included a long-running partnership with French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel. Epstein bankrolled Brunel's MC2 model management. A victim later said the agency functioned as a front for trafficking women. In 2020, a year after Epstein's death, Brunel was arrested in Paris on suspicion of serious sexual misconduct and trafficking. In 2022, he too was found dead in his jail cell. His death in custody didn't involve sleeping guards or faulty cameras, but it certainly added fuel to the theories that were now burning holes in people's minds. Some of Epstein's money and access may also trace back to Robert Maxwell. father of Epstein's longtime partner and accomplice in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell. Robert Maxwell was a Holocaust survivor who fought with distinction in the British Army after the Nazis killed his entire family. After the war, he built a sprawling media empire, operating in a world where business, politics, and intelligence seemed to blur. Over the years, he'd been alleged to have had contacts with MI6, the KGB, and Mossad, with claims that some of his companies doubled as fronts. But Maxwell's career ended as mysteriously as it began. In 1991, he was found dead after falling from his luxury yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, in circumstances still considered suspicious to this day. Soon after his death, investigators uncovered that Maxwell had looted hundreds of millions from his company's pension funds, leaving thousands of British workers destitute. His daughter Ghislaine, already close to Epstein, rejected the inquest's conclusion that her father had simply suffered a heart attack, fallen overboard, and drowned. With her father gone, Ghislaine's presence at Epstein's side only grew, helping to cement his image among the elite. In 2002, New York Magazine dubbed Epstein a man of mystery, one of the most dazzling single men in New York. How he made his fortune was anyone's guess, and had been for years. A decade earlier, in 1992, just after he began appearing with Ghislaine, the British tabloid Mail on Sunday asked, "But what is he? Property developer, concert pianist, math teacher, corporate treasure hunter, stockbroker, merchant, banker, or globe-trotting businessman?" He was known for flying Nobel Prize-winning scientists on his private jets, and around the time of that New York profile, he even took actors Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, along with former U.S. President Bill Clinton, on a trip to Africa aboard his customized Boeing 727, nicknamed later the Lolita Express. One of his most regular visitors to the New York townhouse was Ehud Barak, former IDF chief of staff, defense minister, and Israel's prime minister from 1999 to 2001. Barak visited repeatedly. In one note, he called Epstein a collector of people, adding, "You are like a closed book to many of them, but you know everything about everyone." Epstein also cultivated ties with Prince Andrew, the wayward British royal. As New York Magazine put it, most everyone on the street has heard of him, but nobody seems to know what the hell he's up to. And that, the article suggested, was exactly how Epstein liked it. What was known is that Epstein spent significant time in London and traveled constantly, logging around 600 flight hours a year. He was often accompanied by young women, allegedly brought along to surface VIP passengers. When at home, he dressed casually, and most mornings began with a long yoga session with his personal instructor. After that, he might be meeting the Trilateral Commission or the Council on Foreign Relations, both circles he moved in, or he might be out with the rich and famous. But he never drank. He didn't like drugs or alcohol. What he did like was schmoozing. Asked about Epstein in 2002, Donald Trump said, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy." One victim later said that she was recruited after being spotted while working at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, but how close the two men actually were remains disputed. Author Michael Wolff has said Epstein told him in a 2017 interview, "I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years, and that Epstein called him the Trumpster." Trump has called those claims smears. Wolff says he recorded more than 100 hours of interviews with Epstein and has seen compromising photos, but he hasn't released the tapes, and no such photos have surfaced. If Epstein did have compromising material on past and present politicians, the fallout could cut across the political spectrum. Wolff's view is that the case is too hot to handle, a scandal that could stain American politics on both sides. But Wolff's credibility has long been questioned, with critics pointing out his history of factual errors. In fairness, Epstein's VIP connections don't make them all guilty of anything by default. But for sure, Epstein did collect rich, brilliant, and powerful people the way others collect rare art. One favorite was Bill Clinton. Epstein once called him the world's greatest politician, and Clinton returned the compliment, describing Epstein as a highly successful financier and committed philanthropist. As noted, the two traveled to Africa together on what were said to be humanitarian trips for the Clinton Foundation. Talking about how they worked on combating HIV and empowering the poor, Clinton said via a spokesperson, "I especially appreciated his insights and generosity." If that's true, there was a very different side to Epstein than the person his victims talked about. Had Epstein fooled Clinton, or something worse? In 2019, like Trump, Clinton said that he knew nothing about Epstein's crimes. U.S. media reported Clinton flew on Epstein's jet as many as 26 times during 6 separate trips, sometimes without Secret Service on certain legs. It's also been alleged he took Epstein's helicopter to St. Thomas. Clinton denied he visited the island, contradicting the testimony of now deceased victim Virginia Giuffre. To date, however, there is no physical evidence that either Trump or Clinton committed crimes. Also, Ghislaine Maxwell was recently reported as stating in transcripts that no illegal activity ever happened regarding Trump or Clinton. Whatever the case, the facts available show us Epstein moved among incredibly powerful people. Back in New York, he often hosted afternoon tea for his VIP guests. Manservants in black jackets and white gloves guided guests past bizarre paintings and even a tray of prosthetic eyeballs before leading them to the so-called leather room. Their leopard skin chairs faced a painting of an exotic woman smoking opium while stroking a snarling lion skin. None of his meetings were mentioned in his emails. He rarely emailed anyone, once saying, "I like to hear voices and see faces when I interact." He rarely ate out with people too, calling the habit like eating on the subway. People who knew him said he was almost pathologically private. Even in the phone book, he used a pseudonym. He was described as an iceberg. What you saw was not the whole deal, not even close. He wanted people to think he was an enigma, when the reality was far more prosaic. He was a rotten criminal, hiding in plain sight. He played the man of mystery part, all the time playing people like they were pawns on a chessboard. Even when the net was closing in on him, his untamed ego made him believe he was always one step ahead. As for Ghislaine, the queen to his imaginary kingdom, no one ever really understood how close they were. She was said to be his soulmate, yet they didn't live together. She was often intimate with him, yet he almost always surrounded himself with other females. Oxford educated, she was said to be funny and articulate. If he was the quiet manipulator sitting at the boss's table, she was the PR department. She was also a conduit to Britain's elites. But the friends list didn't stop there. Epstein had ties to Democratic Senate leader George Mitchell, who once said, "I would certainly call him a friend and a supporter." He met with Bill Gates on numerous occasions, including after his initial arrest. He met with former CIA Director William J. Burns. He counted Nobel Prize winners Gerald Edelman and Murray Gell-Mann among his acquaintances. He was also friendly with the former president of Harvard, and he moved in the same circles as Woody Allen, Michael Jackson, and David Copperfield. It's hard to know who joined in Epstein's circus of depravity and who was just another name in his little black book. Whether they joined in or not, anyone around Epstein could see he was almost always surrounded by women. One acquaintance recalled that many seemed foreign and dressed a little bizarrely. At one cocktail party Ghislaine Maxwell organized for Prince Andrew, a guest later admitted she was horrified by the number of weirdly dressed Russian models. To those who suspected he was up to no good, he acted untouchable. His message to digging journalists was stark. When journalist Vicky Ward interviewed 3 girls who'd become Epstein's victims for a Vanity Fair story, he threateningly told her, "That makes me unhappy." He subsequently attacked her integrity, even sending fake letters allegedly from Ward's witnesses to the editor. Maxwell delivered similar threats to girls and women who thought about speaking out. One woman, whose complaint about what happened to her and her sister was ignored by law enforcement, said Maxwell warned her that her life would be destroyed. She moved home several times, yet Maxwell somehow always found her and kept calling her at home, making it clear that they knew where she was. In 2025, the same victim sued the Justice Department, the U.S. Attorney's offices, and the FBI for negligence in failing to help her and her sister. She's the witness who said Epstein once showed her the surveillance room in his New York townhouse. Monitors on every room, the beds, the bathrooms, the entire house. So who was Jeffrey Epstein? Ari Ben Menashe was a former arms dealer and ex-Israeli military intelligence officer. He later turned whistleblower, exposing the murky world of covert geopolitics. And he has claimed that Epstein did in fact work for Mossad, the same agency he alleges assassinated Robert Maxwell. He said, Epstein was intelligence. He was running a classic honey trap operation, and yes, Mossad was involved. In Ben Menashe's telling, Epstein's life was carefully engineered to ensnare the powerful, with the compromat stored away in a Mossad archive. If true, it would be a wrecking ball for countless careers and for the public's trust itself. Until concrete evidence surfaces, it's impossible to say if Epstein was an intelligence asset. And when it comes to his alleged clients, more proof is still needed. After all, there is always reasons that someone might want to smear someone else. As for the so-called client list, Ghislaine Maxwell has flatly insisted it doesn't exist. She also said there are no videos that could be used for blackmail from Epstein's surveilled properties. Still, she isn't exactly regarded as trustworthy among the world's public. Her contention that sexually inappropriate contact between Epstein's guests and in-house masseuses never happened and contradicts victims and witnesses. What we can say is that He began as a working-class kid obsessed with money and became a mass abuser of females. The Venn diagram of Epstein's life overlaps with covert geopolitics and men whose decisions shape the world, but as far as public records show, there is still no confirmed proof he was acting as a blackmailer for any intelligence service. At least not yet. The truth may be out there, but it could be so incendiary that even if partly exposed, it could start a fire that's hard to extinguish. For that reason, if the theories are true, it is highly likely they will never come out in full. Now that you know who Jeffrey Epstein really was, the bigger mystery remains. Why can't we see the full truth? Find out in Real Reason the Epstein list will never be released, or click on this video instead. How does the country's most notorious prisoner, locked inside a high-security facility, just die? Jeffrey Epstein was meant to be under constant watch, guards on duty, cameras rolling, routine checks. Yet he was discovered lifeless in his cell. The system failed, protocols collapsed, and the world was left in shock. What followed was an avalanche of theories, investigations, and suspicions that refused to go away. On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we break down the Jeffrey Epstein case, day by day. July 6, 2019. Jeffrey Epstein returns from a trip to Paris, disembarking at the Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. The police are waiting. This isn't Epstein's first brush with the law. He served time in Florida on sexual offenses in the early 2000s, but most legal analysts say he got a sweetheart deal. Since then, he's cemented his position as one of the most powerful figures in both finance and politics. He's held hundreds of meetings with high-powered individuals, many on his private island in the Caribbean. And despite his deeply checkered past, he remains a regular fixture at New York high society parties. But he won't be making any more social hours. The size of the arrest team makes one thing clear. This is no minor case. Federal agents move in, place him under arrest, and transfer him to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. Upon his arrival, an employee noted that he appeared confused, sad, and withdrawn. She recommended that the staff keep a close watch on him to ensure his safety, but the prison's psychological team was reportedly never contacted. Instead, Epstein was processed into the federal system like any other inmate. But it wasn't to last. July 7th. Epstein only spent 22 hours in the general population. News of his arrest exploded, fueling spiraling rumors that this was the big one. The feds had finally nailed him. Staff at the MCC knew that he was the most high-profile inmate in the facility at the time, so the decision was made to transfer him to the special housing unit. This decision was driven by intense media coverage and concerns for his safety. Officials not only wanted to shield him from other inmates, but also knew it was essential that he made it to trial and possibly expose the other criminals he worked with. And just one day later, this theory would be proven true. July 8th, Epstein was brought to court for his initial hearing, where the federal government unleashed a raft of charges against him, led by sex trafficking. He pleaded not guilty at his initial hearing and was held on remand at the MCC pending further legal developments. The charges echoed those he faced back in 2008, but this time they were far more thorough. Given the penalties, a conviction would almost certainly ensure he spent the rest of his life in prison, as he was nearing 70, and that was the kind of thing that could turn a man desperate. July 9th. Normally, an inmate with charges this serious would get a psych evaluation, a check to see if he might hurt himself. If flagged, he'd be locked down under tight watch with almost nothing in his cell. However, Epstein slipped through the net. The prison psychological staff only urged caution. This allowed him to be kept on psychological observation and out of the general population for his own safety, but without the extra security that might have kept him safe, because it would be a long wait to trial. July 10th. Epstein met with the prison's chief psychologist for a routine check. The log showed he was eating, sleeping, and even talking with other inmates. Epstein wasn't happy about being stuck in the SHU and asked if he could get a single cell. He was taught some coping strategies and continued to deny he was a threat to himself. The psychologist declared him stable and ordered him back to the SHU, this time with a cellmate. July 16th. Epstein met with the chief psychologist again, this time during a meeting with his lawyers. He continued to deny having any psychological issues. The psychologist's report found no concerns or any need for a follow-up session. They noted that Epstein would be monitored only through routine SHU rounds and monthly reviews. July 18th. Epstein and his legal team appeared before the judge for a second time for a bail hearing. Epstein's team attempted to present their client as a low-risk inmate and a pillar of the community who could be released safely on bail. They even proposed an arrangement where Epstein would wear an ankle monitor and be confined to his $56 million New York townhouse. But the judge ordered Epstein held in prison, citing his massive flight risk given his 20 international trips in the past year and his access to private planes. Epstein's legal team vowed to appeal, but for the moment he was heading back to his cell at MCC. And it wouldn't be long before he was in the news again. July 23rd. At 1:27 in the morning, guards were alerted to a commotion in Jeffrey Epstein's cell. The inmate was found sprawled on the floor of his cell, dazed and half-conscious. A strip of cloth was wrapped tight around his neck, the skin beneath already bruised. It wasn't serious enough to require hospitalization, but he was transferred to the psychological unit, where he was observed 24 hours a day to ensure he wasn't a danger to himself. But not everyone thought this was what it appeared to be. Epstein's roommate at the time was Nicholas Tartaglione, a notorious murder and drug trafficking suspect whose charges meant he would never be getting out. Tartaglione denied having any involvement in Epstein's injuries, and prison officials cleared him of involvement, but not everyone accepted that conclusion. Spencer Coven, an attorney representing several of Epstein's victims, argued it might have been a deliberate attack, an attempt to silence Epstein before he could strike a plea deal. And this was when the case really started gaining momentum in the American mind. Nothing official has ever surfaced about Epstein's black book of crimes, but everyone knew he moved in powerful circles and probably kept receipts. And so the idea of an Epstein list caught fire. The alleged roster of names and deeds tied to his private island, and plenty of people were convinced the powerful would do anything to keep it buried. July 24th. Jeffrey Epstein is transferred to his new quarters, a rude awakening even for his current situation. The observation cell for high-risk inmates consists of windows on all sides, 24/7 lighting, and every possible risk stripped away. He stayed there until July 30th by his own request, enduring round after round of psychological exams. Then officials sent him back to the special housing unit to resume his regular jailhouse stay. So how did people take their eye off the ball for a second time? July 31st. Another court hearing would take place, with the judge being briefed on all the events that happened since. It was estimated that the trial would take 4 to 6 weeks, but no formal date was set. For Epstein, it was another crushing setback, who was given yet another psychological check after marshals noted he appeared distressed on his return from court. But after a formal assessment, it was determined that it was safe to return him to his usual routine. It was the calm before the storm. August 8th. The next few weeks would pass relatively quietly, with Epstein under close watch, but a note would later surface, written during this period, in which he bitterly described his cell conditions. He claimed bugs crawled over him at night, guards left him naked in a shower for an hour, and one officer, Tova Noel, deliberately served him burnt food. These accusations were never fully confirmed or debunked, but it was one incident that should have raised more red flags. Epstein arranged a jailhouse meeting with 2 of his attorneys and signed his last will and testament. He named 2 long-term employees as his executors and placed his holdings in a trust. It was a massive alert as to what was coming next, but everyone missed it, and it wouldn't be the only time. August 9th. Epstein's routine at the prison had settled down, and few people were worried about his safety anymore, at least on the surface. The previous day, he had bought around $74 worth of items at the prison commissary, including a radio and headphones. This was seen as an indication that he was adapting to prison life, and security might be lessened soon. However, it was unlikely that he would ever be transferred to general population, due to the threat of violence from other inmates who knew about his crimes. But things happened fast from there. On the morning of the 9th, the largest information dump on the Epstein case was released to the public. Over 2,000 pages of documents related to the current accusations against him. They were seen as highly damning and ensured that even if he was somehow able to avoid conviction, his reputation would never recover. That day, Epstein's cellmate was shipped out in a scheduled transfer. By policy, he was supposed to get a new one, yet none was assigned. That night, he met with his attorneys, who said he looked upbeat. It's never been confirmed how much he knew about the document drop earlier in the day, but it is likely his lawyers informed him. But we still don't have any explanations for what happened that night. The MCC was a tightly regulated facility, housing numerous violent and high-profile inmates. Epstein was supposed to be checked every 30 minutes, a routine meant to ensure his safety. After his attorney meeting, Epstein was walked back to his cell at 6:45 p.m. by Officer Tova Noel, the same guard he'd once accused of singling him out. And that is where things start to get weird. At 7 p.m., Epstein was permitted an unmonitored phone call, normally forbidden under Bureau of Prisons policy, but allowed by the unit manager. Records listed the call as going to his mother's number, but that wasn't the case. In reality, he was talking to someone else, someone close to him. When it ended, Epstein walked back to his cell, a cell he now occupied alone. That night, Noelle and her partner were on duty to run the standard inmate checks. Both had spotless records until now. Cameras caught them skipping the 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. counts. At 10:30, Noelle strode past Epstein's door but never looked inside. The cell count was submitted and approved based on the falsified information, and the lockdown for the night began. It wouldn't be the only strange thing to happen that night. The guards were required to check every 30 minutes, but from midnight until 6:30 a.m., Noelle and her new partner Michael Thomas never entered the cells. Cameras caught them sitting at their desks, sleeping, and browsing online. But the paperwork told a different story. During this time, they signed multiple false count slips, indicating they had checked the cells repeatedly. Hallway cameras showed no one ever stepped into Epstein's cell. The cover-up might have never been discovered if investigators hadn't later reviewed the footage. And soon, their job failure would become worldwide news. August 10th. It was 6:30 at the MCC. Chow time. The guards were distributing breakfast, but one inmate was missing. The morning shift guards arrived at Epstein's cell and found him in a near-seated position, a strip of bedsheet tied around his neck and fixed to the top bunk. He was unresponsive, already in cardiac arrest. The guards immediately hauled him down and began performing CPR, reportedly yelling at the criminal to breathe. But Epstein was gone. He had been dead for almost 2 hours. The supervisor was notified, and Epstein was transported quickly to the nearby hospital, where he was officially pronounced dead. But even this was an unusual violation of protocol. A death like this requires the cell to be treated like a crime scene. Epstein's body should have been examined on site by crime scene investigators, with evidence preserved and photographs taken. But less than 10 minutes after the body was discovered, the crime scene had been heavily disrupted and much of the evidence had been destroyed. And the mysteries would only deepen from there. One of the first things the investigators did was check out the security footage, but all 3 cameras covering Epstein's cell had failed. 2 produced no video at all, and the third recorded only damaged, unusable images. The MCC was an aging prison with outdated equipment, but for the highest profile inmate in custody, the simultaneous failure of every camera was staggering. Noelle soon confessed to her supervisor that she and her partner had failed to perform any of the cell checks and falsified the slips. This was an unusual incident for a guard with a mostly clean record. It wasn't clear if it was a deeply unfortunate time to shirk job responsibilities or something much more sinister. As word of Epstein's death leaks out of the prison, it didn't take long before conspiracies started to emerge, and many people thought it wasn't Epstein's hands around the bedsheet. And some of them have good evidence. This was the first death of this sort at the MCC in 21 years, and forensic pathologist Michael Baden quickly raised concerns with the official story. He pointed out that Epstein's size made the method improbable, that sturdier materials like his sleep apnea wires were ignored, and that even small items on the bunk appear untouched. This would potentially indicate that the crime scene was staged, and Epstein was strangled by someone who entered the cell. After all, he had plenty of enemies. On one hand, the official story made sense. Epstein was an older man, used to wealth and privilege, and it had all been stripped away. He was possibly going to spend the rest of his life in prisons, forced to either be mostly in isolation or to be in the general population where he would be a massive target. But others argued that he could have been targeted by people who wanted to ensure his knowledge of past clients never got out. They could have easily paid a struggling prison employee to look the other way. Sooner or later, the evidence would come out. August 11th, Baden would be sent by Epstein's lawyer to observe the initial autopsy conducted by Chief Medical Examiner Barbara Sampson. The evidence proved that the body was consistent with a self-inflicted death by hanging, although Epstein's team disputed the findings, suing for more access to the camera footage near his cell. They argued that the evidence pointed to murder, and this theory soon gained traction in the media. That meant more and more attention was turned to those who had past dealings with Epstein, and soon there would be hell to pay for those who fell down on the job. August 13th. The first head to fall wasn't one of the names directly responsible, but the boss. Attorney General Bill Barr announced an investigation into the MCC's failings and suspended Warden Lamine Ndiaye, replacing him with James Petrucci from the Otisville Penitentiary. 2 staff members on duty that night were also placed on leave, but unlike the warden, their absence was widely expected to be permanent. There was much more to come, but first business had to be taken care of. September 5th, Jeffrey Epstein was laid to rest in Palm Beach, Florida. His body had been claimed after the autopsy by an unknown associate, who would later turn out to be his brother Mark, who ran a real estate business and had never been associated with his brother's crimes. While Mark deliberately kept a low profile, he stated in a few interviews that he believed the circumstances were suspicious. The case was so high profile and tensions were so high that the family chose to have the markers removed from their parents' tombs to avoid vandalism. But the fallout was just beginning. November 19th. The criminal trial was about to begin, but not against Epstein. All charges had been dropped after his death. Ghislaine Maxwell hadn't even been charged yet, but the case against Tova Noel and Michael Thomas was much easier to put together. The two were charged with multiple counts of falsifying records and associated conspiracy. And there was plenty of evidence. They claimed that they were being scapegoated for larger issues in the prison system, and at that point, they would have been the only people to go to jail in the Epstein case. But the system showed mercy with the two taking a deferred prosecution deal and being allowed to go home. But another key figure wouldn't be so lucky. December 2019. Nick Tartaglione had his own trial to worry about. But the criminal was also a suspect in the first incident that nearly left Epstein dead. Details of the July 23rd incident came up in court, but the defense claimed that he had actually tried to save Epstein's life. It was a bold claim, and they wanted to present the footage in court. But when they attempted to play it, the government claimed it had disappeared. Judge Kenneth Garce ordered the government to find answers, but they came back and claimed that it had been deleted because of a clerical error. Another case of missing information related to Epstein. But the mystery would keep growing. Epstein was gone, but his secrets weren't. The evidence he left behind was about to take others down. On July 2, 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell was indicted. Sex trafficking, conspiracy, charges heavy enough to put her away for life. After years of hearings, she got 20 years. And she wasn't the only one. That same year, Epstein's associate Jean-Luc Brunel was charged by French prosecutors with sex crimes later. But like Epstein, he never made it to trial. His death in custody was, to many, all too familiar. But one case wouldn't stop anytime soon. The FBI and Justice Department opened their investigation into Epstein's death the same day the warden was reassigned. But no smoking gun ever surfaced. The inquiry outlasted Trump's presidency, continued under Biden, and concluded with Attorney General Merrick Garland. On June 27, 2023, the Justice Department released its report. It cataloged dozens of failures, negligence, incompetence, and misconduct, but ultimately found no evidence of foul play. And for most people, that answer wasn't good enough. As of 2025, Maxwell remains the only person convicted in connection with the case, though she has since been transferred to a lower security facility after reportedly cooperating with authorities. Most of the files are still sealed, many part of the ongoing criminal investigations, and no client has ever been charged. Which means that however or whoever ended Jeffrey Epstein's life, many of his secrets died with him. Jeffrey Epstein's mysterious death raised more questions than answers. And that's not the only case buried in government files. Watch 50 declassified FBI secrets to see what agencies don't want you to know. Or click on this video instead.
And we want to talk about the presence of Border Patrol here in Charlotte. And I can say not just here in Charlotte, but also now we're getting reports in Raleigh. We'll stick here in Charlotte. So the Department of Homeland Security has said the operation of Charlotte's Web is to, quote, target criminal illegal aliens terrorizing Americans. That's what they said. And they're doing these operations here in North Carolina. But during the agency's ongoing surge in Chicago, a court filing shows hundreds detained there are not considered high public safety risk. WCNC Charlotte's Nate Morbido joins us here in studio. So Nate, you were taking a look at the records. You were going through this. This story aired yesterday evening. What were you able to find out?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of what we want to figure out here in Charlotte could be based on what has happened in other places. Mm-hmm. And so we know they spent a significant amount of time Border Patrol in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I knew there was a class action lawsuit taking place there, pushing for the release of many of these people who have been detained, mm-hmm. accusing them essentially of arresting them improperly. And that's what a judge
Greetings, my brother in holiness. God bless you.
What's good, brother?
What's good? Peace and blessings, brother.
There's a
Hey,
lot going on, man. There's a lot going on.
like I said, man, if they don't release them files now, they gonna get released on Judgment Day.
That's
I'm telling you, it's a lot, man. The evidence is there. It's there, man. Like that's the crazy part about it. It's like it's in our faces, and it's funny because it's kind of like they expect the American people just to like, you know what? I'm watching television. Let me just flip to the next channel and see what's going on over there. No, it's in our faces. You know, the rich and the powerful always get richer.
To shut up and forget about it.
Yeah, man. I said it in the chat. That man ain't dead, man. He faked his death. That's what I think. Allegedly. I think he faked his death.
I mean, it's strange. They said the camera's dead. There's no footage. He just popped up. Just popped up on our lives.
Real talk. And also so you telling me this man got a whole island, but he get buried in West Palm Beach, Florida? If I got my own island, bury me on my island. Why am I getting buried in an unmarked grave? Because they were saying that they made sure they trying to seclude it because they don't want people to vandalize the grave, right? So if that's the case, send him. No, we can't go to Epstein Island. With regular American or whoever people looking for him, they're going to vandalize it. They can't just get him and go to that place. So why would you bury yourself in a place that's easy to access? See, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense. Yo.
Yeah. There's a lot going on with this one, brother. There's a lot going on.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah.
But like you said, the Lord sees all and he certainly knows all. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. But
They still need to drop them though. They still need to drop them though. I want to.
Well, it's really strange how Trump don't want to talk about it. Don't want to hear about it.
Hey man, all I gotta say about Trump is I can say this: he's our first president that was ever a felon, and that ain't for no reason. That's a fact. So if you're trying to cover something up, if you ain't guilty, bro, you ain't gotta cover it up.
That's true.
If you ain't guilty, bro, you like, let it come out. I don't care.
Now, I didn't know that Trump had a statue of him and Epstein put up. That's how close friends they was.
He had a statue of him?
Yeah, there's a statue that honors Trump's long-lasting bond with Epstein. Let me see where this is at.
What?
Yep. Yeah, on the National Mall. That's in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's wild, yo. Hey, man. I love my brothers, man. But bro, I ain't building no statue for you, bro. Oh no, that's crazy. See, you know what? That shows the bond and the tightness of those two. I think that's what he doesn't want to come out. He don't want people to see what he was really doing. We're gonna see. We'll find out. Hey, even this picture. Look at this. Look at their smiles. They have that smile like, I know what you did last summer.
I know what you did last night. That's that smile right there.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yo, man. They definitely guilty for sure. And I don't think that Trump is far from it whatsoever.
That's facts. So I mean, the vote is in, brother. There's everybody voted yes, so he can't pretty much stop it. I don't know if he tried to veto it, with his executive powers. That's gonna look extremely guilty.
Yeah, that's true.
They want to come out with the Epstein files, and Congress voted. The House just voted. and then if he veto it and say, no, I don't want it to come out, that's going to look extremely guilty. Like Brother Jamon said, he's 50-50 because if they release the list and not prosecute anyone, then there's no reason to release it. It would just cause anger and rage in the country. You know?
But you know what? That's very true. That's true, because they can put it out. I mean, it's only going to be like for knowledge's sake if you really want to put it. But I'll be honest with you, I think he's going to veto it, and just because he just don't care. Like, man, he doesn't care what people think. So I think he's going to veto it. He don't care if people think he's guilty either. Oh yeah. Ooh, that's going to be crazy though, yo. That's going to be wild. And see, if they release it, right? I don't know. Like, you remember back in the day with who was it? Was it Kennedy? No. It was Clinton. Remember they were trying to find that Clinton was doing some crazy stuff, and they did catch him in the White House and all that, right? That would that be premise for Trump? You think to be taken out of office once they find out the debauchery and all certain things?
That might be the reason why he's trying to tell people, like, just shut up and don't look at it, kind of thing, because he knows that he can definitely be impeached.
Man, hey, he wanted that shut up and drive. y'all take what I can get. And you know what? And the crazy part about that is just like it shows you how certain people with money and power and the things that they can do. You know what I mean? Of course, we know that, the Lord is, he's the conquering one of this whole land. But we know the evil men that wax gross, they have so much money, bro, that they think they can do anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy. I didn't even know that he built a statue. That's crazy. That's wild.
Man. I gotta knock off here, my brother, but I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts, and I agree wholeheartedly that Trump vetoed this. This is going to be grounds for serious questions. Questions. Uso Drago said, "Why didn't the previous men release it when they were in power? If they would have during the election, Trump would have never won." Let that sink in deep. Point.
That's true. I agree with that. That's true. He wouldn't have one.
Sister Vanessa says this cover-up is bigger and more dangerous than everyone thinks. Once all is uncovered, I believe we're going to see Trump and I think she meant Obama. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if he's up over there too. Yeah.
Be out on one of his islands, that's for sure. Sister Bonnie said Trump was paying everyone hush money, so be expecting a check in the mail. They said $2,000 to forget about it.
Hey, I heard they saying next year, so
putting a zero on that, sir. We ain't forgetting nothing.
Right. But I appreciate you. Appreciate you letting me on, brother. Wonderful topic as usual, brother. Peace and blessings to everybody that pulled up, everybody in the chat. Oh yeah, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll talk to you later, brothers.
Amen.
Lord willing, brother. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. God bless you, brother.
God bless, bro.
Well, family, I mean, it goes without saying. The vote is in. We'll see what comes from it, what comes of it. Hopefully the truth comes out. That's all we can hope for. But beyond that, I definitely wish to all of you a blessed day. Lord willing, we will catch you later on in the after hours, covering tonight's topic, how to receive the Holy Ghost. This is your brother of low degree, wishing you all a wonderful and blessed day in the name of Jesus Christ.
Bye.